love women. Really, I do. I want us to be happy, safe and go lucky. What I don't want is for us to be segregated, like some weird group in need of special attention. So why on earth has Glastonbury, the closest this country comes to hedonism on heat, believe me, I should know, sanctioned its first ever women-only venue? Created by a group, unsurprisingly called the Sisterhood, this area will apparently offer live music and, rather ironically, workshops on inclusion. Billed as a secret space for women, the producers say women-only spaces are necessary in a world that is still run by and designed to benefit mainly men. What absolute nonsense. Gender-segregated dance floors are the preserve of countries with terrible human rights records. Think Iran and India, not Britain. This country is about blazing a trail and not going back to the Dark Ages. Forcing women to change their behaviour to accommodate prehistoric tendencies is an admission of failure, nothing else. Gender segregation, with very few exceptions, has no place in our society, and certainly not in the fields of one of our most gloriously liberal summer parties.
So, secret space for women, segregated, weird group. That was all in your intro.
It was.
Was that a description of Woman's Hour?
Oh,
that you present on?
very good, very good. There is a men's hour as well.
No, that's fine. I'm glad there's a men's hour.
And there's
That's
also
called Radio 5,
the
is
football
it?
industry.
Yeah, exactly. I actually agree with you, despite my joke.
I
agree with you, because I was reading a few months ago about the possibility or the introduction of segregated carriages on trains in a town in Germany, and I know that Jeremy Corbyn has touted the idea of segregation, and I think that's fundamentally wrong to progress. It's a backward step. But I have to say, in this particular instance with Glastonbury, who was it who prompted that sort of this women-only segregated
Well, I think it's
space?
these women who've come up with it. They're a collective. It's in the Shangri-La field. I'm sharing a lot of knowledge about Glasto. I don't remember most of my experiences in the Shangri-La field. And they've talked about it being an inclusive space for everybody who identifies as a woman. So there's some trans issues going on in there. I sort of see all of that. However, can you imagine if men set up a male-only zone within a music festival? I mean, there would be complete, and rightly so, uproar. I mean, we're going now to the space, you brought up sport, or I brought up sport, about the idea of no longer maybe having sport segregation in terms of male-only golf clubs. We're looking at that in sort of the wider world. For me, recreational spaces are about us all coming together. And if the Sisterhood, whoever these women are really about inclusion and really about equality, we have to make men part of the conversation.
Absolutely, Emma, absolutely. And I think they should be renamed the Muppet Group, because I am furious about this. I think that we're going backwards in terms of equality. And I just feel if it's a safety thing, then I totally get it, because it's a drunken environment, everyone's partying.
I'm not sure
and
I
if
do
it's
with
safe,
that, though.
But then I can see the point of, to prevent rape, etc. But I think it's mental, absolutely absurd. I mean, we're trying to campaign, as you say, some of the golf clubs in the UK to allow women to go into them. And then we're going the opposite, and we're saying, hold on a little second, we want our own bit here. So, guys should get their own bit too. We're trying to come together and work together, and I think it's appalling.
Well, I'm sorry, disagree with you both there.
Okay.
So, in sort of normal situations, I would agree with you, Emma. I think everyday situation. When it comes to Glastonbury, the reason Glastonbury is so filthy and gross and disgusting is because of the men. So I'm sorry, I want a women-only tent that will be clean and won't have gross toilets. So for me, I'm all for this, and I'm going to have my own deck chair. Unfortunately, I can't go this year because of the referendum, but I will be there next year with my deck chair in this clean, lovely women-only tent in the Shangri-La field.
You met some of my friends. They're some of the dirtiest campers. Some of my female friends. There is no guarantee of cleanliness. Hang on a moment. Okay,
Gross!
all right,
Do you remember
toilets.
that? Were you there
we do
that year?
gender-segregated toilets.
No, but they're still near each other. That's too much for me.
Okay, hang on.
So I'm all for this tent.
Coming back to the safety point, because it's an interesting thing that you mentioned there, Michelle, because in Cologne, obviously over New Year's
course,
Eve,
yeah.
we saw some terrible outbreak of sexual assaults en masse. And then Cologne is also famous for this carnival. I've never been to this carnival. I need to work my way over there. But the carnival that then followed a few weeks later, the police, in all their wisdom over there, decided to create women-only safe spaces and introduce more lighting. Now, how many people do you think they caught from that night in New Year's Eve who actually perpetrated those attacks? It's like under 10, right? How about we have better policing rather than segregating women and making them change the way they behave for the way men are?
But I don't think Glastonbury's about safety, though. It's not about safety.
They did say it's a secret space where you can be.
But isn't it also because, unfortunately, when you look at the statistics of how many women actually perform at most festivals, it's something like there are... I think 72% of the bands that perform at festivals are male. So I do think it's more because of that issue. But if we're going back to safety, the stats are, 64% of women feel that they've received unwanted sexual attention in a public place. So there are two arguments here. I don't think Glastonbury's about safety. I think Glastonbury's about inclusion.
But I think Glastonbury is... The example is
and
showing...
cleanliness.
But OK, I'll tell you what, some of my really awful female friends who aren't that clean. But, you know, what I'm trying to say is I think there's a bit of a trend, you know, Corbyn bringing up this idea of let's go back to segregating to make women safe. Let's go back to having this because it's a male-designed world. You know, we need to be pushing beyond that, and I think it's a weirdly
and also, it excludes...
trend.
What it does as well is it excludes decent men. That's the thing.
You're speaking about yourself,
in that tent.
I want in that tent.
Greg.
Mainly I want in that tent because there's a DIY workshop.
There
and
is.
I need to learn some because I'm useless, and you said you're useless, so maybe you could join
What do
me.
you think,
You might
Greg?
want the nice toilet.
But the fact is, the serious point is that if you've got decent, law-abiding, responsible men that respect women, if there's a situation where a woman is feeling abused, then a lot of those guys will step in and help defend them. And I think as soon as you create segregation, you're isolating people and you're making, you know, good people feel that what their contribution isn't good enough.
Well, before I came onto that, I consulted the feminists in my family, because I've always been surrounded by all these...
Strong women.
Bolshy women. And strong women. Let's call them strong.
I'm trying to make it that you can go home tonight. Helping you out there, Fred.
My daughter said to me, Dad, just keep out of it. He said, you can't win joining in this debate because you're a man. No. And so I thought, well, then I asked my wife, who said that she thinks the whole thing is ridiculous, but the position you take. Does it really matter that much?
Does it really matter?
Does it really matter?
I think it really does
and
matter.
I'm not sure it does, just for Glastonbury. If there's a bunch of women who happen to want to go into a tent...
And only hang out.
To an area alone, hang out together,
feminism
why
to
not?
new heights.
I don't care.
And I'm all about helping women. I mentor in business over 80 women, all about their confidence and everything else. You know, we've been fighting for years regarding the golf clubs to let us into some of these clubs. So I think that I think it's appalling. We're going backwards.
Well, I mean, I did say in few exceptions, because obviously there will be times where you do genuinely, like there are obviously women's charities that look after specific women in an issue, like there are men's charities. I mean, equally, I happen to go to a single-sex school.
So did I.
That, for me, personally worked well.
Me too.
But I also know for other girls it didn't. So it's not like I'm not a product in some way of being segregated at times. It's just where I feel it's a slippery slope is where we have one rule for men and say, you get rid of all your male-only clubs, but on the left, because this is probably able to be typified like that, we want to have our cake and eat it. And I'm not saying it's, you know, something that we need to put onto the agenda in a big way. I know you're bored of talking about Brexit. But it is something that I think is worth discussing as a theme, because I see it popping up.
Well, ideally, you wouldn't want it. In a world, in the
Well,
world
we
we'd
don't
all
live in an
we'd like to be
ideal
part of,
world.
you wouldn't want it. But if a group of women say, look, I feel much better if I can do this,
Fair enough.
do we care?
I wonder if Glastonbury felt pressured into accepting them as well, what the rationale behind it was. Because if a group of this group, if they're quite powerful, if they're
sisterhood.
lobbyists, if they're, you know, you just wonder whether or not they've said, right, this is what we want, and Glastonbury have gone, OK, we better say yes because we don't want any negative publicity.
Well, we've given them a bit, and we've given them some positive as well. But the loos sound great, and I'm not going to go to Glastonbury this year because I'm now scared the sisterhood are going to hunt me down. But we